The world's water resources are threatened. They suffer from pollution, degradation, overexploitation, waste, and unsustainable management. They're also threatened by the impact of climate change. According to the World Bank 2012 report Turned on the Heat, in a 4-degree warmer world, while wet regions such as Northern Europe will become wetter, dry regions such as South America or Africa will become drier. These regions are already affected by water scarcity. In addition to climate change impacts, global population is expected to reach 9 billion by 2050, which means increased water demands in the next decades. In some regions, this would exacerbate existing tensions over water access. My special concern in this presentation is about tropical glaciers located in the mountains of developing regions such as the Andes or the Himalaya. Tropical glaciers are critical sources of fresh water for the people located in the mountain, as well as the communities located along watercourses at mid-altitude, in lowlands, and in the coastal areas. Yet, the world tropical glaciers have been retreating since the late 20th century. In Peru, for instance, where 70% of the world tropical glaciers are located, studies have indicated that glacier cover area have already decreased by 25% in the last 30 years. At this rate, many glaciers threaten to completely disappear within decades. The resources from tropical glaciers have multiple uses, for instance in agriculture, for human consumption, for the industry, or hydropower production. Hence, glaciers can be seen as water towers. With a constant glacier retreat, resources available in these reservoirs will be affected in yet unknown ways. Although we know that glacier runoff are critical in regions such as India, South America, or China, we cannot determine precisely how decrease in runoffs will affect socio-economic and ecological systems. Further global-scale studies are still needed. Access to natural resources is often not equal among populations. Therefore, in the context of climate change, we can expect that some communities will be more affected by water shortage than others. In Peru, for instance, mountain populations are often marginalized, and their concerns not always reflected into policies. Global warming could therefore exacerbate existing tensions over competing water access demands and allocations among communities located along watercourses at different altitudes. In fact, such tensions are already observed in some regions of Peru, for instance in Ancash. Communities located at the top to the bottom of the mountain, such as the Andes, are interdependent. They have a shared dependency on glacier for fresh water. Therefore, it's necessary to better understand the interrelations among islands to coastal areas in order to better manage water resources for the population. What is done upstream can affect downstream communities and vice versa. For instance, the adoption of unsound policies and unsafe development paths in the islands can cause dramatic consequences for lowland communities. Moreover, unsound water management has negative impacts on ecosystems. The tropical Andes, considered as a biodiversity hotspot, is also very sensitive to climate change impacts. Changes in temperature, humidity, runoffs, and water availability will affect, for instance, the Peruvian paramos, upon which inhabitants of the mountain depend. Shift in runoffs from glacier melt will induce increasing negative shocks on livelihood, economic development, and ecosystems in mountain regions depending on tropical glaciers. Moreover, water interdependencies among highlanders to lowlanders will be seriously affected in yet unknown ways. Under the threat of a complete disappearance of some tropical glacier by the end of this century, it is time to make some choices. We can either fight over water access, or we can cooperate and manage water resources in a more sustainable way. A necessary step towards more sustainability is to avoid a 4-degree warm world. By keeping global average temperature warning at 2 degrees or rather than that below, we could avoid about 50% of the negative impacts on water resources expected in a 4-degree warming. We would also increase our chance to avoid tipping points leading to irreversible consequences in many regions of the planet. Besides the reduction of greenhouse gas emission, actions need to be taken at the policy and community levels now. especially because water stretches are already observed and will continue regardless of climate change impacts. Policymakers and communities have to decide together on better ways to manage water resources, preserving them for present and future generations, ensuring economic activities in the mountain and coastal areas, protecting livelihood conditions and the ecosystems. Mountain to coastal communities should adopt cooperative win-win water strategies that respect the need of population in islands to coastal zones. These communities and their leaders must be aware of their shared dependency on glacier and cooperate instead of fighting over water resources. This is the main idea behind an island to ocean or H2O approach for water management, an approach comprehensive of the interdependencies among islanders to lowlanders, an approach aiming to foster cooperation to build resilient communities in mountain systems that depend on runoff from the melting glacier.